What is the true value of a simple act of kindness? For Ariana Hayes, a 23-year-old waitress drowning in debt and family medical bills, it was a question she never thought to ask. She worked at the Gilded Spoon, one of Manhattan's most exclusive restaurants, a place where compassion was a currency rarely spent. But when a destitute old man walked through those doors shivering and ignored by everyone, she made a choice. It was a choice that would cost her everything she had. Right before it led her to a truth so staggering, it would change the course of her life forever. What if the person you helped, the one everyone else threw away, was secretly the most powerful person in the room? Ariana Hayes felt the ache in her bones before she even felt the chill of the late October air. It was a deep, settled weariness that had become her constant companion. At 23, she navigated a life that felt a decade older. By day, she was a student at the Parsons School of Design, her sketchbook filled with vibrant dreams of architecture and light. By night, she wore the starched black and white uniform of a waitress at the Gilded Spoon, a place where dreams were either consumed on gold-rimmed plates or crushed under the heel of a patent leather shoe. The Gilded Spoon wasn't just a restaurant, it was a theater of wealth on Park Avenue. Marble floors gleamed under chandeliers that dripped crystal light, reflecting the polished smiles of the city's elite. The air, thick with the scent of truffle oil and quiet ambition, was a world away from the cramped Brooklyn apartment she shared with her mother and her younger brother Leo. Leo was the anchor of her life, and the source of its storm. His cystic fibrosis was a relentless thief, stealing his breath, his energy, and every dollar Ariana and her mother could scrape together. The latest experimental treatment, a slim, desperate hope offered by a specialist at Mount Sinai, came with a price tag that looked more like a zip code. So Ariana worked. She picked up extra shifts, sacrificed sleep for study, and poured her fading energy into serving people for whom $1,000 dinner was a casual Tuesday. Her manager, Mr. Richard Davies, was a man carved from ice. His obsession was perfection, or rather the appearance of it. A fork placed a millimeter out of alignment, a water glass less than 3/4 full, a smile that didn't quite reach the eyes. These were cardinal sins in his book. He patrolled the dining room like a shark, his eyes scanning for any imperfection that might tarnish the restaurant's 3 Michelin-star reputation. Hayes. His voice cut through the low hum of conversation. Table 7. The Vanderbilts. Don't just stand there daydreaming. Their Pellegrino should have been opened 30 seconds ago. Yes, Mr. Davies Ariana murmured her own dreams, feeling like a distant, forgotten language. It was on a particularly brutal Thursday evening, with the rain outside lashing against the panoramic windows, that the door chimed. But the person who entered wasn't a sleek financier or a socialite draped in Chanel. It was an old man. He was a ghost from a different world. His coat, a thin, threadbare tweed, was soaked through, clinging to his skeletal frame. His face was a roadmap of hardship, his white hair plastered to his scalp by the rain. He clutched a worn wooden cane, his knuckles white, and his eyes, a startlingly clear blue, darted around the opulent room with a mixture of confusion and desperation. He looked lost, cold, and utterly out of place. A hush fell over the nearest tables. A woman in a silk dress subtly pulled her Fendi bag closer. The host, a young man named Julian, froze his practiced smile, faltering. Mr. Davies materialized instantly, his face a mask of controlled fury. Sir Davies began his voice, low and menacing. I believe you've made a mistake. This is a private establishment. The old man flinched but held his ground. I just need to get out of the rain for a moment, he rasped, his voice thin and papery. Perhaps just a glass of water. "We don't serve just water to vagrants," Davies hissed already, motioning for security. "You are disturbing our clientele. Please leave, now." Ariana watched from across the room, a tray of appetizers heavy in her hands. Her heart constricted. She saw past the ragged coat and the trembling hands. In his pale blue eyes, she saw the same flicker of vulnerability she saw in Leo's after a difficult breathing treatment. It was the look of someone fighting a battle nobody else could see. Every instinct, every rule drilled into her by Davies screamed at her to look away, to get back to work, to let security handle it. Losing this job wasn't an option. It was Leo's lifeline, but then the old man's gaze met hers. For a fleeting second, there was a spark of recognition, a silent plea that transcended the chasm between their worlds. At that moment, he wasn't a problem to be removed. He was a person. As Davies and the security guard began to corner him near the entrance, Ariana did something she knew she would regret. She put down her tray, took a deep breath, and started walking towards them. The space between her station and the restaurant's entrance felt like a mile-long tightrope. Every eye in the room was on her. She could feel Mr. Davies's glare burning into her, a silent promise of retribution. Her heart hammered against her ribs, a frantic drumbeat against the symphony of clinking glasses and muted conversations. "This is insane, Ariana," a voice in her head screamed. "Leo's medication, the rent, don't throw it all away for a stranger." But her feet kept moving. She reached the small tense circle by the door, just as the security guard, a burly man named Frank, put a hand on the old man's arm. The old man winced, a flicker of pain crossing his features. "Mr. Davies," Ariana said, her voice surprisingly steady. "Please wait." Davies turned to her, his eyes narrowing to slits. "Hayes, what in God's name do you think you're doing? Get back to your section. This does not concern you." "He's a customer," Ariana stated, looking directly at the old man. "He's come in out of the storm and he's asked for service. It's my job to provide it." A collective gasp rippled through the nearby tables. Julian, the host, looked at her as if she'd just sprouted a second head. Defying Mr. Davies was professional suicide. "He is a vagrant who will drive away our actual customers," Davies retorted, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Look at him. He can't afford a glass of our water, let alone a meal." "Frank, remove him." "No," Ariana said, taking another step forward, positioning herself slightly between the manager and the old man. She turned her most professional, disarming smile on the stranger. "Sir, I apologize for the confusion. We have a table for you. Right this way." The old man looked at her, his blue eyes wide with disbelief. He seemed as stunned as everyone else. Ariana ignored Davies's apoplectic expression and gently guided the man towards the most inconspicuous table in her section, a small two-top near a service entrance, partially obscured by a large potted ficus. It was the lepers' colony of tables, but tonight it was a sanctuary. "I will deal with you in a moment, Hayes," Davies seethed before turning on his heel to smooth things over with the gawking patrons. Ariana pulled out the chair for the old man. His movements were stiff as he sat his wet coat, leaving a dark patch on the plush velvet seat. He placed his gnarled hands on the crisp white tablecloth, looking at them as if they were foreign objects. "Thank you, miss," he said, his voice barely audible. You didn't have to do that. Everyone deserves a little warmth on a night like this," she replied softly, unfolding a linen napkin and placing it beside him. "My name is Ariana." "Art," he said, offering a weak smile. "Just art." She brought him a glass of still water with a slice of lemon, just as she would for any other guest. He drank it down in 3 long gulps, his throat clicking with thirst. "Can I get you something to eat?" Art? She asked gently. The soup of the day is a creamy tomato bisque. It's very warm. He looked down at his hands, a blush of shame creeping up his wrinkled neck. I'm afraid I don't have any money, miss. Your boss was right. I just wanted a place to sit for a while. Ariana's heart ached. She thought of the $50 in her wallet earmarked for Leo's prescription refill. It was a choice she shouldn't have to make. But looking at Art's defeated posture, she knew she already had. Don't you worry about that, she said, leaning in conspiratorially. Listen, the kitchen just made a mistake on an order for a beef bourguignon. It's a beautiful, slow braised stew. They were just going to throw it out. It would be a shame for it to go to waste. Would you do me the favor of eating it? It was a lie, of course, a transparent one, but it was wrapped in dignity. Art's eyes glistened with unshed tears. He simply nodded, unable to speak. Ariana punched the order into the system, her own employee code flagging it. The cost would come directly out of her tips and likely her next paycheck. When she brought the steaming bowl to his table, the rich aroma of red wine and tender beef filling the air, the look on his face was one of pure, unadulterated gratitude. It was a look that felt more valuable than any tip she'd ever received. He ate slowly, savoring every bite as if it were his first meal in days. Ariana went about her duties, serving the Vanderbilts, refilling wine glasses, and placating impatient diners, all while feeling the searing heat of Mr. Davies's gaze. She knew the reckoning was coming, and when Art had finished his meal and she was clearing his plate, it arrived. "My office. Now," Davies commanded from behind her, his voice devoid of all warmth. Ariana's stomach plummeted. She gave Art a reassuring nod before following her manager into the small, sterile office behind the kitchen. The door clicked shut, sealing her fate. The air in Mr. Davies's office was cold and smelled faintly of bleach and disappointment. He sat behind his large mahogany desk, steepling his fingers, his face a thunderous mask. Ariana stood before him, her back straight, her hands clasped behind her to stop them from shaking. "Explain yourself, Hayes." He began, his voice dangerously calm. "I was providing service to a person who entered the restaurant, sir," she said, keeping her tone respectful but firm. "You were undermining my authority, damaging our brand, and costing us money." He snapped his composure, cracking. "I have a $200 complaint from Mrs. Vanderbilt at table 7 because she had to look at that filth while she ate her lobster thermidor. And I see a charge for a $48 beef bourguignon on your employee tab. Are you insane? He was hungry and cold, Mr. Davies. This is not a soup kitchen," he roared, slamming his hand on the desk. "This is one of the finest dining establishments in the world. Our image is everything. Your Bleeding Heart charity has jeopardized that. This is your final warning. One more misstep, one more toe out of line, and you are gone. Do you understand me?" "Yes, Mr. Davies," she said, the words tasting like ash. "Now get out and clear that table. I want him gone before the dessert rush." Ariana walked out of the office, her body trembling with a mixture of fear and adrenaline. The warning was clear, the threat to her livelihood, to Leo's well-being, was very real. But as she returned to the dining room, a strange sense of resolve settled over her. She had done the right thing. She went to Art's table. He was looking out the window at the rain, which had softened to a gentle drizzle. "Is everything all right, my dear?" he asked, his voice full of concern. He had seen the confrontation. "Everything is fine," she lied with a smile. "I hope you enjoyed the meal." "It was the best I've had in a very long time," he said, his gaze earnest. "You have a kind heart, Ariana. Don't let anyone take that from you." His words, simple and sincere, fortified her more than he could know. To her surprise, Art returned the following Thursday, and the Thursday after that. He became a quiet, unassuming fixture at her little table by the ficus tree. He was always clean, though his clothes remained worn. He never asked for anything but water. And each time Ariana would find a way to bring him a meal. Sometimes it was a mistaken order. Other times a chef's sample she was supposed to taste test. She would pay for it out of her dwindling tips, a secret transaction between her, the kitchen staff who learned to look the other way, and the old man with the kind eyes. They started to talk. She learned that Art had been a builder in his younger years, and that his wife Eleanor had passed away a few years prior. He spoke of her with a reverence that made Ariana's throat tighten. She was the architect of our lives. He told her one evening, his eyes distant. She could see the beauty in things no one else could. She would have loved this place, not for the glamour, but for the light. She always did love the light. Ariana, in turn, found herself opening up to him. She told him about Parsons, about her dream of designing buildings that felt like homes, not just houses. And hesitantly, she told him about Leo. She described his wicked sense of humor, his love for video games, and the constant, terrifying hum of the nebulizer in their small apartment. She spoke of her fear, the crushing weight of the medical bills, and the guilt of never being able to do enough. Art listened. He didn't offer platitudes or empty reassurances. He just listened. His blue eyes filled with a deep, compassionate understanding that made her feel seen in a way she hadn't in a very long time. He became her confidant, their weekly dinners a small island of peace in her turbulent life. The other staff noticed, of course. Some mocked her, calling her Saint Ariana of the soup kitchen. Others, like Maria, a veteran waitress with tired eyes and a kind smile, would occasionally slip her a $20 bill. "For your brother," she'd whisper. "You're a good kid." Mr. Davies watched it all, his disapproval a palpable force. He seemed to be biding his time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Ariana knew she was on thin ice, but the bond she'd formed with Art felt too important to break. He was more than just a charity case. He was her friend. One evening, after a particularly difficult phone call with Leo's doctor about the rising costs of a new medication, Ariana was feeling the strain more than ever. She was distracted, her movements less precise. She accidentally spilled a few drops of red wine while pouring for a notoriously fussy hedge fund manager. Davies was on her in an instant. His public reprimand was sharp and humiliating. As she retreated to the kitchen, her eyes burning with tears, she felt a profound sense of hopelessness. Later, as she served Art his surplus shepherd's pie, he noticed her red-rimmed eyes. "A hard night?" he asked gently. She nodded, unable to trust her voice. He reached across the table and patted her hand with his calloused, trembling one. "The strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire, Ariana," he said softly. "Remember that." The simple touch, the quiet strength in his words was enough to keep her from shattering. But she didn't know that the fire was about to get much, much hotter. The breaking point was coming, and it was going to be far more devastating than a spilled glass of wine. The first Tuesday of December brought with it a biting wind and the city's first flurry of snow. It also brought Mrs. Genevieve Delacroix to the Gilded Spoon. Mrs. Delacroix wasn't just wealthy. She was old New York money, a woman whose opinion could make or break a restaurant's reputation overnight. She was dining with a food critic from the New York Times, and the tension in the air was thick enough to be carved and served as a main course. Mr. Davies was a whirlwind of frantic energy hovering over their table, personally ensuring every detail was flawless. The entire staff was on edge. For Ariana, it was just another night of walking on eggshells. Art arrived at his usual time, shaking snowflakes from his thin coat. He looked paler than usual, the cold seeming to have seeped deep into his bones. Ariana settled him at his table, her heart aching at his visible shiver. She quickly brought him a steaming cup of tea, whispering that it was in the house. "You'll catch your death, Art," she chided gently. "That coat isn't nearly warm enough." He just smiled. "A warm cup of tea and good company are better than any coat, my dear." Their quiet corner was a world away from the high-stakes drama unfolding at Mrs. Delacroix's table. But those worlds were about to collide. As Ariana was delivering the main course, a meticulously plated Dover sole to the critic, Mrs. Delacroix's perfectly manicured hand shot out and gripped her wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her diamond rings digging into Ariana's skin. "Young lady," she said, her voice dripping with disdain as she nodded towards Art's table. "What is that doing in here?" Ariana, frozen. "I'm sorry, madam. That derelict," she clarified, her nose wrinkled in disgust. "I have been watching you fawn over him for the past half hour. This is the Gilded Spoon, not a homeless shelter. His presence is utterly ruining my appetite. I come here for an experience, not to be confronted with the city's squalor." The critic paused, his fork hovering in mid-air, his eyes darting between Mrs. Delacroix and the old man. He was taking notes. Mr. Davies, who had been observing from afar, swooped in instantly. His face was ashen. "Mrs. Delacroix, I am so terribly sorry. Please accept my deepest apologies. This is an internal staffing issue that is being dealt with immediately." He shot Ariana a look of pure venom. It wasn't a warning anymore. It was a death sentence. He strode over to Art's table, his posture rigid with fury. Ariana, her heart pounding in her ears, followed a few steps behind, a dreadful premonition washing over her. "You," Davies barked at Art, dispensing with any pretense of civility. "Out. Your little charity session is over. Get out of my restaurant now." Art looked up, his expression more sad than surprised. "Son, there's no need for—" "I am not your son." Davies spat his voice, rising, drawing the attention of the entire dining room. He grabbed the edge of Art's table. "I have tolerated this nonsense for weeks because of her," he snarled, pointing a trembling finger at Ariana. "But it ends tonight. You are a disgrace to this establishment." And with a grunt of exertion, he tipped the table. The crash was deafening. The teacup shattered on the marble floor. The small plate and silverware clattered. Art, caught by surprise, pushed his chair back with a cry, narrowly avoiding the falling table. The entire restaurant fell silent. Diners stared, mouths agape. Ariana rushed forward. "Art, are you okay?" Ignoring her, Davies turned his full, unrestrained fury on Ariana. You are finished!" he yelled, his face contorted in a purple rage. "You are fired. You have brought nothing but trouble to my restaurant since you started this pathetic little project. Your sentimentality, your gross insubordination, it ends now. Get your things and get out. You will not work in another high-end restaurant in this city again. I will personally see to it." The words hit her like physical blows. Fired. Blacklisted. The room began to spin. She saw Leo's face in her mind, the stack of unpaid bills on her kitchen counter. It was all over. All because she had shown a little kindness. Tears welled in her eyes, hot and shameful. Frank, the security guard, was already moving towards Art, his expression grim. Mrs. Delacroix watched with a look of cold satisfaction. Ariana felt a hand on her arm. It was Maria, the older waitress. "Come on, honey," she whispered, her own eyes full of pity. "Let's go. It's not worth it." Defeated, humiliated Ariana let Maria lead her away. She cast one last, heartbroken look back at Art, who was being hauled to his feet by the security guard. His blue eyes met hers, and in them she didn't see fear or anger. She saw something else, entirely. A profound, simmering disappointment, and something that looked almost like resolve. As they reached the staff entrance, a voice cut through the silent, shocked dining room. It was a voice that was suddenly clear, strong, and filled with an authority that silenced everything else. It was Art's voice. "Stop!" Everyone froze. Frank stopped pulling on his arm. Davies, who had been straightening his tie, turned around with a sneer. "Did you say something?" Davies mocked. "You're in no position to give orders." The old man stood up straighter. He seemed to shed his frailty like a coat, his posture becoming commanding. He brushed a piece of lint from his worn tweed jacket with a steady hand. He looked directly at Davies, and his pale blue eyes were now as sharp and cold as chips of ice. "On the contrary, Mr. Davies," the old man said, his voice resonating with a power that filled the cavernous room. "I'm in the only position that matters." He took a slow, deliberate step forward. "My name is not Art," he announced, his voice unwavering. "It is Arthur Pendleton, and I am the billionaire owner of this restaurant and every other establishment in the Pendleton Hotel Group." A silence so profound fell over the Gilded Spoon that the gentle hum of the wine refrigerators seemed like a roar. Every diner, every chef peeking through the kitchen doors, every member of the waitstaff stood frozen, their eyes locked on the old man who was no longer just an old man. Mr. Davies's sneer melted from his face, replaced by a wave of slack-jawed disbelief. His face paled, the color draining away, until it was the shade of the starched white tablecloths. "Well, what did you say?" he stammered, the sound barely a squeak. Arthur Pendleton took another step forward, his cane clicking decisively on the marble floor. The trembling uncertainty was gone from his movements. In its place was the measured, confident gait of a man accustomed to absolute authority. "I said," he repeated, his voice dangerously level, "that I am Arthur Pendleton. I founded this company 45 years ago with my late wife, Eleanor. I own this building. I own the land it stands on. I own the plates you serve on and the uniform on your back." He gestured around the room with a sweep of his hand. "My wife and I built our first diner with our bare hands. We believed that food was more than just sustenance. It was an act of service, of giving warmth and dignity to others. The gilded part of the name was her idea of a joke. The spoon was the important part, the tool you use to feed people." His gaze, sharp as a shard of glass, landed back on the petrified manager. "I have been coming here to my own restaurant in disguise for the past 2 months. My board of directors told me our profit margins were at an all-time high, that your management was exemplary. But I've been feeling disconnected from what we built. I wanted to see if the soul of this place, Eleanor's soul, was still here." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. "I found nothing but a cold, sterile monument to greed and ego, a place where a shivering old man is seen as filth and a customer's complaint is valued more than basic human decency." He then turned his eyes to Mrs. Delacroix. The socialite who moments before had been a queen on her throne now shrank back in her seat, her face a mask of horror. "Genevieve," Arthur said, his tone icy, "your father Henry must be spinning in his grave. He was a good man. He would be ashamed to see the callousness you've displayed tonight. You have my permission to finish your meal. It will be the last you ever have in any of my establishments. You are permanently banned." Mrs. Delacroix opened and closed her mouth like a fish, but no sound came out. The food critic was scribbling furiously in his notepad, his eyes wide. This was a story far bigger than a review of Dover Sole. Finally, Arthur Pendleton's gaze fell upon Oriana. She was still standing by the staff entrance, her hand held by Maria, tears silently streaming down her face. She was in shock, her mind struggling to reconcile the frail, gentle art she had befriended with the powerful, commanding figure standing before her now. He walked towards her, his expression softening entirely. The hardness left his face, replaced by the familiar warmth she had come to know. "And then," he said, his voice now gentle enough for only her to hear, "I found you." He stopped in front of her. "I watched you, Oriana Hayes. I watched you risk your job day after day. You didn't just give me food. You gave me your time. You gave me your compassion. You shared your stories, your fears, and your dreams. In a building of cold marble and gold, you were the only thing that was genuine. You were the only one who remembered what the spoon was for." He looked at Davies, who was now trembling uncontrollably. "Mr. Davies, you spoke of brand and image. You are correct, they are important, which is why your association with the Pendleton Group is hereby terminated. Frank?" He said to the stunned security guard, "Please escort Mr. Davies off the premises. He is to collect his personal belongings from his office and nothing more. Have his final severance papers drawn up by legal in the morning. Make it 1 week's pay for services rendered." Davies looked as though he'd been struck by lightning. "Mr. Pendleton, sir, I didn't know. It was a mistake. A misunderstanding." "The mistake," Arthur said, turning his back on him, "was thinking that a person's worth is determined by the cost of their coat. The only misunderstanding is your own. You failed the test, Richard." As Frank, his face a mixture of shock and grim duty, led the sputtering, defeated manager, away a new and unfamiliar sound began to fill the restaurant. It started at one table, then spread to another. It was applause. Soft at first, then growing louder, the patrons of the Gilded Spoon began to applaud. Not for the billionaire, but for the waitress who stood crying by the door. Arthur Pendleton turned back to Oriana, his clear blue eyes shining. "Now, Miss Hayes," he said with a small smile, "I believe we have some things to discuss, starting with your promotion." Ariana could only stare, her mind a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. Promotion, just moments ago, her world had been collapsing. She had been fired, publicly humiliated, and her future, Leo's future, had seemed to vanish into a black hole of despair. I don't understand," she whispered, wiping a tear from her cheek with the back of her hand. Arthur's smile was gentle. "It's quite simple. You've been the heart of this restaurant for weeks, and no one even knew it. It's time we made it official." He looked over her shoulder at the gathered staff who were watching with wide-eyed awe. "Is there somewhere more private we can talk?" Maria, recovering from her own shock, quickly gestured towards Mr. Davies's now vacant office. "In here, Mr. Pendleton. Sir." Arthur nodded and gently guided Ariana into the office, the same room where she had received her final warning just a few weeks earlier. The irony was not lost on her. He closed the door, shutting out the buzz of the dining room, and offered her a seat. He remained standing, looking out the small window into the bustling kitchen for a moment, before turning back to her. "Ariana," he began, his voice losing its corporate edge and regaining the familiar warmth of art. "When I started this experiment, I was a lonely old man. I had lost my wife, my children were scattered across the globe, running their own empires, and I was rattling around in a penthouse overlooking a city I no longer recognized. I was surrounded by wealth, but I was spiritually bankrupt." He sat down in the chair opposite her. "I came here looking for a spark of what Eleanor and I created. I found it in you, Your kindness wasn't a performance. It was genuine, and it was costly. I know what you sacrificed from your own tips to feed me. I saw the toll it took on you. He leaned forward, his expression serious. You told me about your studies at Parsons, about your dream of designing beautiful functional spaces. You told me about your brother Leo. At the mention of Leo's name, Ariana's composure crumbled. A fresh wave of tears came. The new treatment, the bills. I don't know what I'm going to do now. Arthur reached into the inside pocket of his worn tweed coat. He pulled out, not a wallet, but a sleek, modern smartphone. With a few taps of his thumb, he placed a call. "Robert, it's Arthur," he said into the phone. "I'm sending you a file. A patient named Leo Hayes. Yes, cystic fibrosis. I want you to get him an immediate consultation with Dr. Annabelle Sterling at Johns Hopkins. Yes, her team. The best. Money is no object. He is to have access to every trial, every treatment, every specialist. This is a Pendleton priority. Bill everything directly to my personal foundation. I'll expect an update by morning." He hung up and looked at Ariana. "Doctor, Sterling is the leading researcher in the field. Leo will be in the best hands in the world. You will not have to worry about another medical bill for the rest of his life." Ariana stared at him, her breath hitched in her throat. It was too much to process. The weight that had been crushing her for years, a burden so heavy she had forgotten what it felt like to stand without it, was suddenly gone. Lifted in a single 30-second phone call. She began to sob, not from sadness or fear, but from a profound, overwhelming relief that was so intense it was painful. Arthur waited patiently, letting her cry it out. When her sobs subsided, he continued. "That takes care of the most important thing. Now for the second. Your education. It will be funded in full. A master's degree, a doctorate, whatever you wish to pursue. Your only job is to learn and create." He wasn't finished. "And as for your position here, I'm not offering you your waitress job back, and I'm not offering you Davies's old job as general manager. I am offering you a new role created just for you. Director of Hospitality and Brand Integrity for the entire Pendleton Hotel Group North America." Ariana's jaw dropped. "Director? But I don't know anything about that." "You know everything that matters," he countered. "You know how to treat people with dignity. You know that the soul of a business is more important than its profit margin. I don't need another suit who can read a spreadsheet. I have hundreds of those. I need a conscience. I need a heart. Your first task will be to redesign the training program for all our staff, starting right here at the Gilded Spoon. Your second will be to work with our architects, your future colleagues, to redesign the ambience of our lobbies and restaurants, to make them more welcoming, more human. To bring the light back in, as you might say." He smiled, a genuine crinkling smile that reached his blue eyes. "The salary will be more than enough to ensure you and your family are comfortable for the rest of your lives. What do you say, Ariana? Will you help an old man find the soul of his company again?" For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Ariana Hayes wasn't thinking about debt or fear or exhaustion. She was thinking about the possibility. She was thinking about Leo breathing easy. She was thinking of sketchbooks, filled not with desperate dreams, but with actual blueprints. She took a deep, shuddering breath, looked the billionaire who had been her friend all along in the eye, and nodded. "Yes," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Yes, Mr. Pendleton, I will." "Please," he said, his eyes twinkling. "Call me Art." 6 months later, the Gilded Spoon was unrecognizable. Not in its decor, which remained elegant, but in its atmosphere. The chill was gone, replaced by a palpable warmth. Music played softly, the lighting was a little softer, and the staff, now trained under Ariana's new Dignity First program, moved with a relaxed confidence. Ariana Hayes was no longer a waitress. She walked the floor in a sharply tailored but comfortable pantsuit, her sketchbook often tucked under her arm. She knew every staff member by name, from the head chef to the dishwashers. She had implemented a new policy. One table every night, dubbed Eleanor's Table, was reserved. Working with local charities, she ensured that someone truly in need, a struggling veteran, a single mother celebrating a small victory, an elderly person dining alone, could experience an evening of fine dining with absolute dignity, completely free of charge. The waiting list was months long. Mr. Pendleton Art was there most evenings, not in disguise, but sitting at a quiet table reading a book. He looked 10 years younger. He watched Ariana as she moved through the room, effortlessly soothing an anxious customer, sharing a laugh with a waiter, or making a quick sketch of how the light from the window hit a vase of flowers. He saw the soul of his wife's vision, alive and thriving in the young woman he had almost overlooked. Ariana's life had been transformed. Her mother had been able to quit her second job. Leo was responding miraculously to the treatment at Johns Hopkins. His doctors were optimistic for the first time in years. He was breathing easier, and so was she. Her classes at Parsons were no longer a burden, but a joy, her real-world work with the Pendleton Group's architects, informing her designs, and vice versa. One evening, Art called her over to his table. "Look at this," he said, gesturing to the bustling happy room. "This is what Eleanor always wanted. Not a museum of wealth, but a place of respite. A place that feeds the body and the spirit." "We did it, Art," Ariana said, smiling. "No, my dear," he corrected her gently. "You did it. You reminded me that the strongest foundations are not built on marble or steel, but on kindness." Ariana looked around the room at the smiling faces of the guests and the staff at the warm glow of the chandeliers at the man who had changed her life. She realized her own dream had evolved. It was no longer just about designing buildings. It was about building spaces for humanity, for connection, for compassion. She had found her purpose, not in a gilded cage, but in the simple, profound act of offering a spoon to someone in need. And in doing so, she had saved more than just an old man from the cold. She had saved herself and the legacy of a love she had never known. The first few months of Ariana's new life felt like a dream she was afraid to wake from. She moved her mother and Leo into a spacious, light-filled apartment on the Upper West Side, with a terrace garden her mother had always wanted, and a dedicated state-of-the-art air filtration system for Leo. His progress under Dr. Sterling's care was nothing short of miraculous. For the first time, the constant shadow of fear that had loomed over her family began to recede. At work, Ariana poured her heart into transforming the gilded spoon. It became her laboratory for compassion. Employee morale soared, and surprisingly so did profits. The positive buzz generated by Eleanor's Table drew in a new, younger clientele, people who were drawn to the story and the authenticity as much as the Michelin-starred food. The restaurant felt alive. Art was delighted. He saw her success as a vindication of his belief in her and his wife's founding principles. The next logical step in his mind was to take Ariana's model and apply it across the entire Pendleton Hotel Group. This meant presenting her vision to the board of directors. And that was when the dream began to fray at the edges. The boardroom was on the 80th floor of the Pendleton Tower, a glass-walled cage in the sky that looked down on the rest of Manhattan. It was a world of polished chrome, black leather, and cold, hard numbers. The board members were men and women who who had fought their way to the top of the corporate ladder, people for whom sentiment was a synonym for weakness. Ariana, in her most professional navy blue suit, felt like a child playing dress-up. As she set up her laptop, she could feel their eyes on her, their gazes dissecting her, questioning her very presence. They all knew her story. The press had had a field day with the waitress who inherited a kingdom, and she could sense their skepticism. Arthur, sitting at the head of the table, gave her a reassuring nod, but his presence couldn't shield her from the man sitting directly opposite him, Mark Thorne, the chief financial officer. Thorne was everything Mr. Davies had been, but amplified by a factor of 1,000. He was sharp, impeccably dressed, armed with an Ivy League MBA, and possessed eyes that seemed to calculate profit and loss with every blink. He saw Oriana not as an asset, but as Arthur Pendleton's sentimental, multi-million-dollar folly. "As you all know," Arthur began, his voice echoing in the sterile room, "Ariana Hayes has revolutionized our flagship restaurant. I have asked her here today to present her proposal for rolling out the Dignity First and Eleanor's Table initiatives across all 54 of our North American properties." Ariana took a deep breath and began. She spoke of human connection, of brand integrity, of building a legacy. She showed them photos of the transformed gilded spoon, of the smiling staff, of the heartfelt thank you notes from guests of Eleanor's Table. When she finished, there was a polite but cool silence. Then Mark Thorne spoke. "Thank you, Miss Hayes, for that passionate presentation," he said, his voice smooth as silk but laced with condescension. "I've taken the liberty of running some preliminary financial models on this proposal." He clicked a button, and the large screen behind Ariana, which had been showing images of happy people, was suddenly filled with stark, brutal spreadsheets. Red numbers bled across the screen. The Dignity First initiative, with its increased staff training hours, higher wages for non-tipped employees, and expanded benefits, represents an initial operational cost increase of 17%. Thorne stated, his voice clinical. The Eleanor's Table initiative, when scaled across 54 properties, 365 days a year, projects a direct annual revenue loss of approximately $9.8 million. That's before we factor in the potential brand dilution of positioning our luxury establishments as charitable destinations. He turned his gaze on Ariana. "Ms. Hayes, you have a background in design and hospitality service. What is your response to the fiscal reality of your proposal? How do you justify a $10 million expenditure on what is, forgive me, essentially a marketing campaign built on feelings?" The question was a direct attack, designed to expose her inexperience. The room was silent. Every eye was on her. All the confidence she had built over the past 6 months evaporated. She was no longer Ariana Hayes, director of hospitality. She was the waitress caught in the headlights, being asked a question she didn't know how to answer in their language. I believe in long-term value. It's about the people." She stammered her words, feeling flimsy and inadequate against his wall of data. "It builds loyalty, a better work environment." Thorne offered a pitying smile. "Feelings are not a quantifiable asset, Miss Hayes. Loyalty doesn't appear on a quarterly earnings report," Arthur interjected, defending her, but the damage was done. Thorne had successfully framed her as a naive idealist, and himself as the guardian of fiscal responsibility. The rest of the meeting was a blur for Ariana. The board voted to table the discussion pending a more rigorous financial impact assessment, a polite corporate term for a slow death. As Ariana packed up her laptop, her hands shaking, she felt utterly defeated. She had failed. She had let Art down. As she walked out of the boardroom behind the other executives, she overheard Thorne speaking in a low voice to another board member. Can you believe it? 10 million for a soup kitchen? Arthur's losing his touch. He's letting the waitress run the company. The words struck her with the force of a physical blow. The waitress. After everything, that's all she still was to them. A girl who had gotten lucky. A charity case. The weight of her old life, the one she thought she had left behind, came crashing back down on her heavier than ever before. For 2 days, Ariana was a ghost. She went to her beautiful office with its panoramic view of Central Park, but she couldn't work. The spreadsheets and reports on her desk seemed to mock her. The confidence and purpose that had propelled her for months had been replaced by the cold, gnawing voice of imposter syndrome. Thorne was right, it whispered. You don't belong here. You're just a waitress pretending. She avoided Arthur's calls, ashamed to face him. She felt like a fraud. He had invested his faith in an investment that was yielding no returns. On the 3rd day, she was sitting at her large, empty desk, sketching aimlessly in her old notebook, a crumbling fire escape, a cracked city pavement images from her past, when a soft knock came at her door. It was Art. He entered without waiting for an answer, closing the door quietly behind him. He didn't look angry or disappointed. His blue eyes were filled with a familiar, gentle understanding. Hard fall? He asked softly. Ariana couldn't meet his gaze. She just nodded, staring at the lines on her page. I failed Art. They're right. I don't know what I'm doing. I should be serving them coffee, not pitching them $10 million ideas. Arthur pulled up a chair and sat beside her, not across from her. He looked at her sketchbook. Eleanor's first pitch to a board of investors was for this company. He began his voice, a low, steady murmur. We were young. We had nothing but a dream. She stood in front of a dozen men in grey suits, much like the ones you faced. They asked her for profit projections for market analysis. They tore her business plan to shreds. He paused. Do you know what she did? She threw her papers on the floor. She told them they were asking the wrong questions. She said, You're trying to build a business. I'm trying to build a legacy. A business makes money. A legacy makes a difference. She told them a story about her grandmother, who believed that feeding someone was the purest form of love. She didn't sell them a company. She sold them a piece of her soul. He looked at Ariana, his gaze intense. They laughed her out of the room. All but one. One old banker saw the vision. He gave us the loan. The others all came knocking a decade later, begging to invest. You didn't fail, Ariana. You just tried to speak their language. You need to teach them how to speak yours. He tapped his finger on her chest. The fire you're feeling now. This is what forges the steel. Don't run from it. Build with it. His words and the story of Eleanor were like a splash of cold water. He was right. She had tried to beat Mark Thorne at his own game. She had let him frame the debate. Her power wasn't in spreadsheets. It was in stories. It was in people. A new fire ignited within her, burning away the doubt. For the next week, Ariana didn't touch a single financial model. Instead, she assembled an arsenal of stories. She created a beautifully designed confidential report filled with testimonials from staff whose lives had been changed by the new work environment. She included a video montage of interviews with the guests from Eleanor's table, a tearful young teacher who could finally afford a honeymoon dinner, a widower celebrating what would have been his 60th anniversary. She gathered data not on revenue loss, but on the 40% reduction in staff turnover at the Gilded Spoon, calculating the immense savings in hiring and training costs. She compiled a dossier of the glowing press and social media mentions, quantifying the brand integrity Thorne had dismissed. She called a follow-up meeting with the board. When she walked in this time, She wasn't a nervous wreck. She was a woman with a mission. "Good morning," she began, her voice clear and steady. "Mr. Thorne was correct at our last meeting. I cannot justify a $10 million feeling. So today I'm not going to. Today I'm going to present you with a $10 million investment." For 20 minutes, she didn't show them a single spreadsheet. She showed them faces. She told them stories. She played them the video. The boardroom, usually a place of sterile debate, was silent, captivated. She ended with the data on employee retention and the valuation of the free, positive press. "This isn't charity," she concluded, her eyes sweeping across their faces and landing on Thorne. "This is the future of the luxury market. Today's consumers don't just buy a product. They buy a story. They invest in companies that have a soul. What I am proposing is not a cost center. It is an investment in our soul. It is the most valuable asset we have." She finished, and the silence that followed was different. It wasn't cold, it was contemplative. An older board member, a woman who had been fiercely skeptical before, slowly began to clap. Then another joined her, and another. Soon the entire room was applauding, not for a waitress, but for a leader. Mark Thorne sat in stunned silence, defeated. He had come armed for a battle of numbers, and she had won with an army of human hearts. The proposal was passed unanimously. Later that evening, Ariana stood with Art in his office, looking down at the sparkling city lights. "Eleanor would have been so proud of you," he said quietly. Ariana watched the endless river of headlights flowing through the city streets below. They were all people with stories, with hopes, with struggles. For the first time, she felt she belonged in that tower, not because she had been given a title, but because she had earned her place. She hadn't just saved her job or launched a program. She had found her own voice and used it to remind an entire corporation that its greatest legacy would not be the gold on its spoons, but the warmth it offered to the people who held them. Ariana's story is a powerful reminder that the person you are when no one is watching is who you truly are. Her single act of compassion, an act that she thought would be her downfall, became the foundation of her entire future. It teaches us that integrity isn't about grand gestures, but about the small, consistent choices we make every day, especially when they're difficult. Arthur Pendleton wasn't just testing his staff. Life, in its own way, was testing Ariana, and she passed with flying colors. What did you think of Ariana's incredible journey? Do you believe that kindness is its own reward, or was Arthur's gift the justice she deserved? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart and reminded you of the power of empathy, please give this video a like and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And for more real-life stories that inspire and move, you don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Thank you for watching. What is the true value of a single dollar? For most, it's nothing. A forgotten coin in a pocket, not even enough for a cup of coffee. But what if that dollar was a key? A test. What if the most insignificant gesture you've ever received was actually the most important moment of your life? This is the story of Anya Sharma, a waitress drowning in debt and despair, who served a meal to one of the world's most reclusive billionaires. He left her a $1 tip on a $5,000 bill. But it's what she did next, her simple, unexpected reaction, that set in motion a chain of events that would unravel a decades-old secret and change her destiny forever. Stay with us. The air in the Gilded Sparrow was different. It was thicker, heavier, scented with money and the kind of perfume that didn't come from a department store. Anya Sharma breathed it in every night, and every night it felt like she was breathing in a world she could serve, but never join. The restaurant, a bastion of old-world New York elegance, nestled in a quiet, tree-lined street on the Upper East Side, was a theater, and she was merely part of the scenery. Her feet throbbed. It was a familiar, deep-seated ache that started in her arches and radiated up her calves, a constant reminder of the 12-hour shifts. She moved with an economy of motion born from years of practice balancing trays laden with seared scallops and truffle-infused risotto, her smile a carefully constructed mask. It was a good mask. It had to be. It hid the exhaustion, the gnawing anxiety about the stack of medical bills on her small kitchen table, and the ghost of a dream she was too tired to even remember most days. Just 3 years ago, her hands, now calloused from hot plates and polishing cutlery, had been covered in clay and charcoal. Anya had been the star sculpture student at Pratt Institute, her work described as viscerally alive. She could see shapes in blocks of marble, feel stories in twisted wire. Then came the phone call. Her younger sister Nina, diagnosed with a rare autoimmune disorder that required experimental treatments not fully covered by any insurance plan. Their parents were gone, lost in a car crash years ago, leaving Anya as Nina's sole guardian. The choice was never a choice. She dropped out, sold her chisels and tools, and picked up a tray. The art school scholarship evaporated, replaced by the relentless reality of rent and pharmacy co-pays. Tonight was a Tuesday, usually a slower, more manageable evening. But a late reservation had come in under a discreet booking name, Mr. Black. The maitre d', a perpetually stressed man named Lawrence, had pulled Anya aside, his voice, a low, urgent whisper. "Sharma, table 7. This is a big one. Very, very big. No mistakes. Don't be too chatty. Don't be invisible. Just be perfect." Anya nodded, the practiced, deferential nod of a seasoned waitress. Table 7 was the best in the house, a secluded alcove with a plush velvet banquette that offered a panoramic view of the restaurant's private garden. When the party arrived, the usual low hum of the dining room seemed to dip a few decibels. There were 2 men. The first was easy to read, Gregory Thorne. He was in his late 40s with a mane of silver hair, a tailored suit that probably cost more than Anya's car, and a Rolex that caught the light with every expansive gesture. He radiated a slick, predatory confidence. He was the kind of man who enjoyed being noticed. The other man was the one who held the room's gravity. He was older, perhaps in his late 60s, with a face that looked like it had been carved from granite. His hair was a shock of white, but his eyes, deep-set and startlingly dark, missed nothing. He wore a simple dark grey suit, impeccably tailored, but devoid of any brand-name flash. He didn't speak as he sat down. He simply absorbed the space around him, his presence a quiet, immense weight. This was Damien Blackwood. Anya knew the name, of course. Everyone did. Blackwood was a legend, a ghost. He was the architect of a global tech and logistics empire, a man who had famously started with nothing but a single brilliant idea for optimizing supply chains in his 20s. He was now worth an estimated $50 billion, but he was pathologically private. There were fewer than a dozen authenticated photos of him in existence. He gave no interviews, attended no galas, and his company Blackwood Consolidated Poumou was a fortress. Seeing him here in the flesh was like spotting a mythical creature. "Good evening, gentlemen," Anya said, her voice smooth and even, betraying none of the shock she felt. "My name is Anya, and I'll be taking care of you this evening. May I start you with some water?" Gregory Thorne waved a dismissive hand. "Voss still. 2 bottles. And we'll have the 98, Chateau Margaux." He didn't look at her, his eyes already scanning the menu, with an air of entitlement. Damien Blackwood, however, was looking directly at her. His gaze wasn't unkind, nor was it friendly. It was analytical probing. It felt less like he was seeing a waitress, and more like he was examining a specimen, noting the faint tremor in her hand as she poured the water, the slight wear on the cuff of her uniform, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. It was unnerving. "Thank you, Anya," he said. His voice was a low baritone, gravelly with age, but clear as a bell. It was the first time a customer in a long time had used her name with such deliberate clarity. The meal was an exercise in tension. Gregory Thorne did most of the talking, boasting about a recent acquisition, name-dropping politicians and CEOs, a peacock displaying his feathers for an unimpressed audience. Damien Blackwood said very little. He ate slowly, deliberately, his dark eyes occasionally flicking up to watch Anya as she cleared a plate or refilled a glass. Each time, she felt the intensity of his observation like a physical touch. He asked her a single unexpected question when she presented the dessert menus. "Anya," he said, cutting through Thorne's monologue. "This finial." He gestured with his fork toward the intricately carved wooden pineapple atop the banquette's corner post. "It's new." Anya was taken aback. The finial had been broken a month ago by a rowdy guest. The owner, Mr. Russo, had gotten a quote to have it professionally repaired that made his eyes water. So Anya had taken the splintered pieces home. In the few precious hours between her shift ending and sleep taking over, she had carefully glued, filled, and recarved the damaged sections, matching the original design perfectly. She'd used the last of her old wood-carving tools. She hadn't told anyone. "Yes, sir. The old one was damaged," she said, choosing her words carefully. "This one is better." Blackwood stated not as a compliment, but as a fact. "The lines are cleaner, more confident." He turned back to his menu, leaving Anya standing in stunned silence. Gregory Thorne shot her an annoyed look, irritated by the interruption. They skipped dessert and asked for the check. Anya ran the card, a black, featureless piece of metal, with no name, only a number. The total came to £4,815.62. She placed the leather billfold on the table. Thorne was already on his phone, sealing another deal in a loud voice. Blackwood took the billfold, scribbled a signature, and placed something in Seoul. "Thank you, Anya," he said again, his eyes meeting hers one last time. It was an excellent meal. Then they were gone, leaving a wake of silence behind them. Her fellow waiters looked at her with a mixture of awe and envy. The Blackwood table. The tip would be legendary. Enough to cover Nina's next treatment cycle, maybe even pay off a chunk of her credit card debt. Her heart pounded in her chest, a frantic bird beating against her ribs. She waited a full 5 minutes, letting her hands steady, before she walked back to the table. She picked up the leather billfold. It felt strangely light. Her breath hitched. She opened it. Inside, on the line, designated for the tip, Damien Blackwood had written in firm, clear script, $100. Next to it, the grand total. 4 hulls, $816.62. Tucked into the sleeve was the signature slip and a single, crisp $1 bill. The world tilted on its axis. The hum of the restaurant faded to a dull roar in her ears. $4,800 and a $1 tip. It wasn't just cheap, It was an insult, a deliberate, calculated, soul-crushing statement. Every eye in the restaurant was on her, waiting to see the legendary tip, waiting to see her reaction, and all she could do was stare at that single, solitary dollar. Anya stood frozen, the leather billfold clutched in her hand. The dollar bill inside felt heavier than a block of lead. It was a brand-new note, so crisp it could have been printed that morning. George Washington's portrait stared up at her, his expression impassive, almost mocking. $1. The number echoed in the silent chamber of her mind. It wasn't just the lack of a generous tip. A 0 would have been better. A 0 could be an oversight, a mistake made by a man unused to handling his own affairs. But $1 was intentional. It was a gesture that required thought. It was a message. Her first instinct was a hot, blinding flash of fury. How dare he? This man who could buy the entire city block without noticing the expense, who spent $5,000 on wine and food as a casual Tuesday dinner, looked her in the eye, used her name, and then left her a tip that was less than the cost of a subway token. He had commented on her carving, seen her work, and then dismissed her with the most contemptuous sum possible. The humiliation was a physical thing, a burning sensation that crept up her neck and tightened her throat. Her colleague, a jaded waiter named Ben, sidled up to her. "Well, don't keep us in suspense. Did he buy you a condo?" He whispered, his eyes gleaming with vicarious greed. Anya couldn't speak. She just opened the billfold and showed him. Ben's jaw dropped. He blinked, then looked again. A low whistle escaped his lips. "No way, no way, Blackwood. The billionaire left you $1." His whisper turned into a choked laugh of disbelief. That's brutal, man. That's colder than the walk-in freezer." The word spread through the staff like wildfire. Whispers turned to stares. The sympathy in their eyes was mixed with a morbid curiosity, the kind people reserve for watching a car crash. The legendary tip was indeed legendary, but for all the wrong reasons. Anya felt her carefully constructed mask begin to crack. The professional smile faltered. Her shoulders slumped. She wanted to run, to go to the staff bathroom and either scream or burst into tears. Lawrence, the maitre d', stormed over his face, a thundercloud. "What is this I hear?" "Let me see that." Anya handed it over. Lawrence stared at the receipt, his face turning a blotchy red. Unbelievable. The nerve of these people. They think they own the world. He looked at Anya, his expression a mixture of pity and frustration. "Look, Sharma, don't take it personally. These guys, they live in a different reality." He probably didn't even think about it. But Anya knew that wasn't true. Damian Blackwood had thought about it. Every action he took seemed deliberate, from the way he sat to the way he observed her. He had looked right at her. He knew. This was a statement. The question was, what was it trying to say? She retreated to the small, cluttered break area, the $1 bill now in her apron pocket. She could feel its crisp edges through the fabric. Her mind raced, cycling through a tornado of emotions, rage, shame, confusion, and a deep, profound sense of injustice. The money itself wasn't the point. Not really. Yes, a large tip would have been a godsend for Nina's mounting medical expenses. It would have been a brief respite from the constant crushing financial pressure. But this was about dignity. Her work, her professionalism, her very existence in that dining room had been valued at 100 cents. She thought about Nina, frail but fierce, whose smile was the only thing that kept Anya going. She thought about the mountain of bills, the threatening red letters on the envelopes. The hope that had foolishly bloomed in her chest for 2 hours had been violently extinguished, leaving behind a bitter ashen residue. Despair began to seep in, cold and heavy. This was her life. Serving condescending men who saw her as less than human, forever chasing bills she could never quite get ahead of. The dream of the artist of the sculptor felt like a fantasy from another person's life. She pulled the receipt from her pocket and looked at it again. 4,815.662. And then his signature. A strong, decisive scrawl. Damien Blackwood. Beneath it on the customer copy was the empty space where she was supposed to just accept this. And then something shifted. The anger was still there, a hot coal in her gut. But something else rose to meet it, a stubborn spark of defiance. The same spirit that had driven her to spend hours meticulously recreating a broken wooden finial for no pay and no recognition. The same spirit her father, a brilliant but perpetually broke engineer, had possessed. He used to tell her, "Anya, they can take your money, they can take your time, but never ever let them take your grace." She wasn't just a waitress. She was Anya Sharma. She was a sister. She was an artist, and she would not be defined by this man's contemptuous dollar. She wouldn't cry. She wouldn't complain to her manager again. She wouldn't let this break her. She would respond. An idea bold and terrifying formed in her mind. She walked back out into the now emptying dining room and approached Lawrence. "Lawrence," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I need the guest copy of that receipt back, the one he signed." Lawrence looked at her confused. "Why, for a souvenir, Anya, just throw it out. Forget him." "I'm not going to throw it out," she said. "I'm going to do something else." She took a pen from her apron. Her hand was shaking, but not from fear or weakness. It was shaking with a strange, exhilarating sense of purpose. She smoothed the receipt on a clear section of the service bar. For a moment, she wasn't in a restaurant. She was back in her studio, a blank canvas before her. This little slip of paper was her canvas now. She wouldn't be rude. She wouldn't be sarcastic. That would be playing his game, sinking to the level of pettiness the dollar suggested. She would rise above it. She would give him the one thing he clearly didn't expect. She took a deep breath, and she began to write. The pen felt alien in her hand, so different from the familiar weight of a chisel or a sculpting tool. Yet as she touched the tip to the paper, a sense of calm settled over her. This was her response, her one chance to reclaim her dignity from the cold indifference of a billionaire. She didn't write on the merchant copy. That had to be filed. She took the customer copy, the one meant for Blackwood's own records, which he had left behind on the table. It was on this slip of paper next to his powerful signature and the insulting $100 that she would make her stand. Her handwriting was neat, a relic from years of art school drafting classes. She wrote carefully, choosing her words not to wound, but to convey a truth he had overlooked. "Mr. Blackwood, thank you for dining at the Gilded Sparrow tonight. On the receipt you valued my service at $1. I accept it not as an insult, but as a challenge. You see, a single dollar can be powerful. For some, it is the start of a fortune. For others, it is the meal they weren't sure they would have. It can be a seed, or it can be a symbol. You are a man who clearly understands the value of building something from nothing. So I will treat this dollar with the respect it deserves. I will invest it, not in stocks or bonds, but in a moment of kindness for someone who needs it more than I do. Perhaps it will buy a coffee for a homeless person on a cold morning, or a flower for someone having a bad day. Thank you for this reminder that true value is not always what is written on a check, but what one chooses to do with what they are given. I hope you have a safe evening. Sincerely, Anya Sharma, Table 7, the artist who fixed the finial. She added the last line on impulse, a final quiet assertion of her identity beyond the uniform. She reread the words. They were not angry. They were not sycophantic. They were simple, direct, and filled with a quiet grace she didn't even know she possessed. It was a response he could not have anticipated. She had taken his gesture of contempt and transformed it into an act of charity, subtly turning the tables on him. She had refused to be the victim. Ben watched her, his expression one of utter bewilderment. What did you do? Are you writing him a complaint? They'll fire you, Anya. No, she said, folding the note neatly. I'm just closing out the check. Her next move was even bolder. She walked to the front desk where Lawrence was sorting through the evening's reservations. Lawrence, I need an address, she said. What address, Anya? Go home. Get some rest. The booking address for Mr. Black. You have it on file. I need to mail him his receipt. Lawrence looked at her as if she had grown a second head. Are you insane? We do not contact guests, especially not this guest. You'll get me fired. You'll get yourself blacklisted from every restaurant in this city. He left his copy. Anya insisted, her voice unwavering. It's a business expense. He'll need it for his records. It's my professional duty to ensure he receives it. She was using the language of the service industry, a shield of professionalism for her audacious plan. I won't say I'm from the restaurant. I'll just mail it. Standard procedure. Lawrence argued for 5 minutes, but there was a stubborn light in Anya's eyes he had never seen before. Finally defeated and deeply worried, he scribbled an address on a piece of paper. It wasn't a home address, but the corporate headquarters of Blackwood Consolidated on Park Avenue. I never did this, Sharma. This is on you. Thank you, Lawrence, she said, taking the paper. The next morning, after just 4 hours of sleep, Anya woke up before her alarm. The first thing she did was take the crisp $1 bill from her uniform. She went to the corner bodega, bought a single stamp and an envelope. With the change, she bought a hot coffee. On her way to the post office, she saw a man huddled in a doorway, shivering in the early morning chill. An old man with weary eyes and hands raw from the cold. She walked up to him and held out the coffee. Here, she said softly, for you. The man looked up surprised and took it with a grateful nod. God bless you, miss. Anya felt a strange lightness in her chest. She had followed through. The dollar was already invested. At the post office, she sealed the envelope containing the folded receipt with her note inside. Her hand hovered over the mailbox slot for a long moment. This was the point of no return. She could lose her job. She could become a pariah in the industry she depended on to survive. Or nothing could happen. The note could be thrown away by some mailroom clerk, never to be seen by the man it was intended for. She thought of her father's words, "Never let them take your grace." She pushed the envelope through the slot. It was gone. The days that followed were thick with anxiety. Every time Lawrence looked at her, she expected him to say, "You're fired." Every phone call from an unknown number made her heart leap into her throat. She went to work, smiled her professional smile, cared for Nina, and tried to pretend that she hadn't just thrown a message in a bottle into the most powerful and unpredictable ocean in the world. The incident with the dollar had faded from the staff's gossip, replaced by new dramas. For everyone else, it was over. For Anya, the waiting had just begun. A week passed, then another. Nothing. The silence from Park Avenue was absolute. The hope that had flickered within her began to die, replaced by a weary resignation. It had been a foolish, romantic gesture. Of course he'd never seen it. She had made her stand to an empty room. Life went on a monotonous cycle of work and worry. Nina had a bad week, and a new expensive medication was prescribed. The credit card bill arrived, and Anya felt the familiar squeeze of panic. The dollar, the note, the brief feeling of empowerment. It all felt like a distant dream. She was just a waitress again, and that was all she would ever be. 70 floors above Park Avenue, in an office that was less a workspace and more a temple of minimalist power. Damien Blackwood sat behind a desk carved from a single piece of reclaimed oak. The room was silent, the view a panoramic sweep of the city he had in many ways conquered. His desk was completely clear, save for a single tablet and a small cream-colored envelope. The envelope had arrived via inter-office mail, flagged by his long-serving executive assistant Martha for its unusual nature. It was addressed to him personally, sent via standard post to the main corporate address, a channel no one who actually knew him ever used. His personal mail was filtered through a half-dozen layers of security. This had slipped through the cracks of the public-facing system. He had opened it, expecting a crank letter or an unsolicited business proposal. Instead, he found the customer copy of his receipt from the Gilded Sparrow, and tucked inside a handwritten note. He read Anya Sharma's words once, then a second time, then a third. A slow, unfamiliar sensation bloomed in his chest. It was not amusement. It was not anger. It was a profound sense of surprise. In his world, people responded to power in predictable ways. They fawned. They groveled. They asked for things. They seethed with impotent rage. They threatened lawsuits. He had built an empire on his ability to predict human behavior, to see patterns in greed, ambition, and fear. This was not in his playbook. He had left the $1 tip for a very specific reason. It was a test, but it was a cruel one, the final stage of a multi-layered evaluation. His friend Dominic Russo, the owner of the Gilded Sparrow, had been his eyes and ears for months. Damien had given him a strange set of criteria. He was looking for someone with integrity, resilience, a quiet intelligence, and a creative spark that hardship hadn't managed to extinguish. Russo had mentioned Anya Sharma. He'd told Damien about her background, her cancelled scholarship, her sick sister. He'd even mentioned offhandedly how she had fixed the broken finial without being asked. That had piqued Damien's interest. The finial was the first test. His comment about it at dinner was to see if she would take credit, if she would be boastful. She hadn't been. She had been modest and professional. The second test was her demeanor throughout the meal, enduring Gregory Thorne's boorish arrogance with unwavering composure. The $1 tip was the final brutal filter. It was designed to provoke a raw emotional response, to see what lay beneath the professional veneer. He had expected anger tears a complaint to the manager. He had expected a typical human reaction. He had not expected grace. He had not expected whole charity. He had not expected her to take his cynical gesture and elevate it. I will invest it in a moment of kindness. The line resonated with him on a level he hadn't accessed in years. And the final sign-off. The artist who fixed the finial. It was a declaration, not of defiance, but of identity. She was telling him who she was, not what he had tried to make her. He swiveled in his chair and looked out at the city. The reason for this bizarre covert search was a secret he held close to his heart, a weight of guilt he had carried for over 30 years. It concerned Anya's father, David Sharma. Decades ago, before Blackwood Consolidated was a titan, Damien had been a ruthless young entrepreneur. David Sharma was a brilliant, gentle-souled engineer working at a small firm Damien was acquiring. David had developed a revolutionary logistics algorithm, a piece of code so elegant it was practically art. It was the key to unlocking massive efficiency gains. Damien knew it was David's work, but the intellectual property belonged to the firm. He acquired the company, took the algorithm, and built his empire upon it. He had paid the firm, of course, but David Sharma, the true genius behind it, got nothing but a severance package. Damien had told himself it was just business, but he never forgot the look in David's eyes, not of anger, but of deep, quiet disappointment. David went on to live a modest life, never achieving the success his intellect deserved, and died too young. The guilt had festered in Damien for decades. He couldn't undo the past, but he could make amends to the future. He learned David had 2 daughters. He wanted to help them, but not with a simple handout. That would be too easy an insult to the memory of a man who valued integrity over wealth. He needed to know if David's character, his grace under pressure, had passed to his child. He needed to find the artist, not just the survivor. Anya Sharma's note was the proof. She was her father's daughter. He buzzed his intercom. "Martha, get me Evelyn Reed on the line, and find out everything you can about a young woman named Anya Sharma and her sister Nina Sharma. Medical history, financial status, everything. Be discreet." Evelyn Reed was his personal lawyer, a woman as sharp and unforgiving as a shard of glass. She handled the matters that required absolute precision and zero sentimentality. While he waited for the call, Gregory Thorne entered his office, all teeth and confidence. "Damien Morning, I'm about to close the deal on that Singapore port contract. They're folding on all our key demands." Damien didn't look up from the note. "Gregory, do you remember the waitress from the Gilded Sparrow the other night?" Thorne scoffed. "The pretty one, vaguely. Why, I left her a $1 tip," Damien said, his voice flat. Thorne chuckled. "I saw that. Savage. Putting the help in their place. What was that about?" "It was about seeing what she would do," Damien said, finally looking at Thorne, his dark eyes cold. "She took the $1, bought a coffee for a homeless man, and sent me a letter explaining the principles of true value." Thorne's smile faltered. He didn't understand. "A nutcase, then. You get all sorts." "No." Damien said the word like a chip of ice. "She's an artist." He folded the note and placed it in his breast pocket. "Gregory, I'm transferring you to the head of the South American division. You'll be based in Sao Paulo, effective immediately." Thorne was floored. "Sao Paulo, but the Singapore deal." "That's a demotion. Why?" "Because you saw a pretty waitress to be put in her place," Damien said, turning back to his window. "And I saw a person of character. Your perspective is limited. Go and broaden it. My jet will be ready for you tomorrow." Thorne stood there sputtering, but he knew better than to argue. A decision from Damien Blackwood was as final as gravity. He backed out of the office, his world turned upside down. The intercom buzzed. "Ms. Reed is on line 1, sir." Damien picked up the phone. "Evelyn," he said, his voice now devoid of all emotion, "I have a new project for you. It's a delicate matter. Its name is Anya Sharma. The ripple had hit the shore. Now the tide was about to turn. 2 weeks after she had mailed the letter, Anya had convinced herself it was a forgotten dream. Life had settled back into its grueling rhythm. Nina's condition had stabilized, but the cost of her new medication was staggering, wiping out what little savings Anya had managed to scrape together. The Gilded Sparrow felt more like a cage than ever, the forced smiles and polite chatter grating on her frayed nerves. The brief flicker of defiance she had felt was gone, smothered by the heavy blanket of reality. One afternoon, a letter arrived. It was not a bill or a junk mail flyer. The envelope was made of thick, creamy cardstock, her name and address written in elegant, fluid calligraphy. There was no return address, only a simple embossed seal on the back, a stylized BR. Her hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of matching cardstock. The message was brief and printed in a severe, no-nonsense font. Anya Sharma. This letter serves as an invitation to a meeting to discuss a matter of potential significance to you. The meeting will be held this Friday at 2:00 p.m. at the offices of Reed & Associates, located at 450 Park Avenue, Suite 5500. A car will be sent to your address at 1:15 p.m. to escort you. Please be prompt. Sincerely, Evelyn Reed-esque. Reed & Associates, Park Avenue, a car service. Anya's mind went into overdrive. She had never heard of Evelyn Reed. What matter of potential significance? Her first thought was that she was being sued, that Damien Blackwood, offended by her audacity, was bringing the full weight of his legal team down on her for harassing him. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her. She was going to lose her job, be buried in legal fees she could never hope to pay. This was the consequence of her foolish pride. She spent the next 2 days in a state of quiet terror. She told no one, not wanting to worry Nina or invite Lawrence's "I told you so." She considered not going, just disappearing. But the summons was too formal, too powerful. Ignoring it felt like it would only make things worse. On Friday, she asked for the day off from the restaurant, citing a personal appointment. At exactly 1:15 p.m., a black Lincoln town car, so polished it looked like a pool of liquid shadow, pulled up in front of her modest apartment building. The driver, a man in a crisp suit, got out and opened the door for her without a word. The ride downtown was surreal. Anya, in her best and only blazer, felt like an imposter as the city's landscape shifted from the worn brick of her neighborhood to the gleaming steel and glass of Midtown Manhattan. The offices of Reed & Associates were on the 55th floor. The reception area was a study in intimidating minimalism: white marble floors, gray suede walls, and a single, terrifyingly severe receptionist who directed her to a conference room. The room had one glass wall with a view that seemed to stretch to the edge of the world. Anya sat at the enormous mahogany table, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, feeling smaller than she ever had in her life. After a few minutes, the door opened and a woman entered. She was in her 50s, with sharp, intelligent features, hair pulled back in a severe chignon, and eyes the color of a winter sky. She wore a perfectly tailored gray suit. She radiated an aura of competence so intense it was practically a force field. "Ms. Sharma," she said, her voice crisp and devoid of warmth. "I am Evelyn Reed. Thank you for coming. Please have some water." She gestured to a pitcher on the table, but didn't wait for an answer. She sat opposite Anya, placing a thin leather portfolio on the table between them. "I'll be direct, as I find it saves time," Evelyn began. "I represent a client who has taken an interest in your situation. This client has become aware of certain financial hardships you are facing, specifically regarding your sister's medical care. Anya's blood ran cold. Who is your client? Is it Damien Blackwood? Evelyn's expression didn't flicker. My client prefers to remain anonymous at this stage. Let's call him a benefactor. She opened the portfolio. My benefactor is prepared to establish a trust. This trust will cover in full all of Nina Sharma's medical expenses, past, present, and future. It will also provide a generous monthly stipend for her living and care expenses. Anya stared at her, speechless. This wasn't a lawsuit. This was a rescue. A lifeline thrown from an invisible hand. It was too much, too sudden. Why was the only word she could manage to push out. Why would anyone do this? My client believes in targeted philanthropy, Evelyn said smoothly. He identifies individuals who are facing undue hardship and provides assistance. Consider it a no-strings-attached gift. No strings attached. Anya had lived long enough to know that nothing, especially not from people who employed lawyers like Evelyn Reed, was ever truly free. The suspicion returned a knot in her stomach. What's the catch? Anya asked, her voice stronger now. What do I have to do? A faint, almost imperceptible smile touched Evelyn's lips. There is no catch in the way you mean. There is, however, a condition, a formality. She slid a single document across the table. It was an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement, dense with legalese. You will be required to sign this agreeing never to discuss the source of these funds, this meeting or my client with anyone, for any reason. Furthermore, she paused, her gaze intensifying. My client owns several art galleries and foundations. He is always looking for new talent to support. He is prepared to offer you a significant personal grant, enough to allow you to leave your current employment and return to your artistic pursuits full-time. It was the dream, the impossible buried dream, offered up on a silver platter. Leave the restaurant. Go back to sculpting. Take care of Nina without the constant terror of debt. It was everything she had ever wanted, and it felt deeply, fundamentally wrong. This wasn't a gift. It was a transaction. An anonymous billionaire was trying to buy her dream and her silence. Why? What was he hiding? The memory of the $1 tip surfaced, that act of cruelty, followed by this act of overwhelming, anonymous generosity. It didn't add up. It felt like a manipulation, another more sophisticated test. And if I sign this, Anya said, gesturing to the NDA, this benefactor also offers me an art grant. A very substantial one, Evelyn confirmed. So he buys my silence, and he buys my art. Anya stated, the pieces clicking into place in her mind. It was a golden cage. He would solve her problems, but he would own her story. He would turn her art, her soul, into another one of his assets. Just then, Anya's phone buzzed. It was a text from her co-worker, Ben. She glanced at it. Ben. You won't believe this. That slick suit Thorne, the guy who was with Blackwood. He just came into the restaurant. He was asking for you. Seemed really desperate. Said he had an offer for you that was better than anything Blackwood could ever give you. Lawrence told him you had the day off. The guy looked furious. Watch your back. A new player had just entered the game. Gregory Thorne. He knew. He was making a move. He was trying to get to her before his old boss did. Anya looked up from her phone, her mind racing. She was caught between two powerful invisible forces. One was offering her a gilded cage. The other was a snake in the grass, likely offering a poisoned apple. She looked Evelyn Reed directly in the eye. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, clear resolve. "Ms. Reed," she said, pushing the unsigned NDA back across the table. "I appreciate the offer. It's more generous than I can possibly imagine. But before I sign anything, I have one condition of my own." Evelyn Reed raised a perfectly sculpted eyebrow. No one gave her conditions. "I will not accept a single penny from a man who won't look me in the eye," Anya said, her voice shaking slightly but full of conviction. "I will not be a project for some anonymous benefactor. If your client wants to help me, he can meet me, face to face, and he can tell me why." Evelyn Reed's composure, as solid and impenetrable as the marble in the lobby, finally showed a hairline crack. She was momentarily speechless, an occurrence so rare it was noteworthy. She stared at Anya not with annoyance, but with a new grudging respect. She had presented the perfect solution, a turnkey escape from a life of hardship, and this young woman had just pushed it back across the table, demanding the one thing Damien Blackwood never gave a personal audience. "Ms. Sharma," Evelyn said, recovering quickly, her tone laced with a warning. "My client does not meet people. That is not how he operates. I strongly advise you to reconsider. This offer will not be made again." "Then I guess I will have to decline," Anya said, a terrifying calm washing over her. She stood up, her legs surprisingly steady. "Thank you for your time, Ms. Reed. Please pass along my regrets and my condition to your client." She turned and walked out of the conference room, through the silent, opulent office, and into the elevator, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had just walked away from security, from a future for Nina, from her own resurrected dream. It was the most insane, self-destructive thing she had ever done. And it felt absolutely right. As she stepped out onto Park Avenue, the city's noise rushing back in, she pulled out her phone and reread Ben's text. "Gregory Thorne, an offer better than anything Blackwood could ever give you." Thorne was the key. He was the disgruntled, demoted executive. He was the weak link in Blackwood's world of secrets. He might have the answers she needed. Instead of going home, she took the subway back to the Gilded Sparrow. She found Ben polishing glasses at the bar. "Tell me everything he said," Anya demanded. Ben's eyes were wide. "Anya, it was weird. He was slick but also sweaty, desperate. He said he knew Blackwood was trying to get to you, and that it was all a scam. He said Blackwood ruins people, and he wanted to warn you. He left his card, told me to have you call him day or night, said it was a matter of life and death." Ben slid a heavy embossed business card across the bar. "Gregory Thorne, Global Strategy Consultant." It had a personal cell number on it. Anya's mind was a whirlwind. Thorne was painting Blackwood as a villain. Was this anonymous charity just a prelude to some kind of trap? What could Blackwood possibly want from her that would require such an elaborate scheme? She knew calling Thorne was a risk. He was obviously playing his own angle. But he was also the only person willing to talk. She needed information, leverage. She went to a nearby coffee shop, took a deep breath, and dialed the number. Thorne answered on the first ring. "Anya Sharma, I was hoping you'd call. I assume you've had a meeting with the Ice Queen, Evelyn Reed." "How do you know about that?" Anya asked, her voice steady. "I know how Damien operates." Thorne said, his voice a slick, conspiratorial purr. "He finds a person's weakness and he leverages it. He's offering you money for your sister, isn't he? An art grant. He makes you think he's a savior, but he's a devil, Anya. I worked for him for 15 years. I know. What do you want Mr. Thorne to help you? He said the lie so smooth it was almost believable. And to get a little justice for myself. Damien is obsessed with your family. It's about your father, David Sharma. Anya froze, the coffee cup trembling in her hand. My father. He's been dead for 10 years. What about him? Your father was a genius, Thorne said. He invented the core algorithm that Blackwood Consolidated is built on. The source of all of Damien's wealth, and Damien stole it. He bought the company your father worked for, took the tech and threw your father away like trash. Now he's old and consumed by guilt. This whole act, the test, the money. It's not for you, it's for him. He's trying to buy absolution. He'll set you up in some foundation, make you a poster child for his generosity, and use your father's story to launder his own reputation. You'll be a puppet, Anya. The words hit her like a physical blow. It was a plausible, ugly story. It explained the obsession, the secrecy, the overwhelming generosity. It painted Blackwood not as a benefactor, but as a user, just as he had been 30 years ago. What's your offer, Mr. Thorne? Anya asked, her voice cold. Simple, Thorne said. Don't take his deal. I've been documenting Damien's unethical business practices for years. Your story is the human element I need. We go to the press, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times. Billionaire's empire built on stolen genius founder's daughter reveals all. It's a massive story. It would cripple him. And for your cooperation, I'll give you a finder's fee from my own accounts. Let's say $10 million. Clean. More than he's offering, and you get to tell the truth instead of being his pet project. $10 million. It was a staggering, life-altering number, and all she had to do was destroy Damien Blackwood. She thought about it. The rage she felt on Blackwood's behalf was real. He had wronged her father. He had built a $50 billion Emma on her family's stolen legacy. Thorne was offering her revenge and a fortune besides. But something felt off. Thorne's story was too neat, his motives too transparently selfish. He didn't care about justice for her father. He cared about revenge for his demotion. He wanted to use her story as a weapon, just as he claimed Blackwood did. She would be trading one puppet master for another. And then she remembered the note. The artist who fixed the finial. Blackwood hadn't thrown it away. He had read it. He had responded. A man trying to simply buy absolution wouldn't have bothered with such an intricate personal test. He could have just had a lawyer cut a check. He was looking for something more than just an heir to give money to. He was testing for character, her father's character. Anya saw the whole board. Blackwood, the guilty king. Thor, the vengeful knight. And she, the pawn they were both trying to move. It was time for the pawn to make her own move. Okay, Mr. Thorne. Anya said, her voice sounding surprisingly convincing even to her own ears. I'm interested, but I need proof. Something concrete about my father's work being stolen. Thorne took the bait. Of course. I have copies of the original code design documents from the acquisition. I'll email them to you. You'll see. It's all there in black and white. Send it, Anya said, and we'll talk again. She hung up. 20 minutes later, an email arrived from a secure server. It contained scanned documents, schematics, and lines of code. She didn't understand all of it, but she recognized her father's neat, precise handwriting on the margins of several pages. It was real. Thorne had given her the weapon. But she wasn't going to use it on Damien Blackwood. She was going to use it to get her meeting. She forwarded the entire email to one person, Evelyn Reed. She added a short, simple message in the body. Reed, it seems your client is not the only one with an interest in my family's history. Mr. Thorne has been very forthcoming. He has offered me $10 million to take this story to the press. My original condition stands. I want a meeting with your client, face to face. Now he has a reason to agree. This is not a threat. It is a request for the truth. Anya Sharma. She hit send. She had played her hand. The king was in check. Now she would see if he would come out from behind his walls. The response came less than an hour later, a call from a blocked number. It was him. You have your meeting. Damien Blackwood said, his voice a low gravel. My car will be there in 1 hour. The car didn't take her to an office. It sped north along the Hudson River, arriving at a stunning house of glass and steel perched on a cliffside. Blackwood was waiting for her on a stone terrace, looking older and more tired than he had in the restaurant. I want the truth, Anya said, foregoing any pleasantries. He met her gaze, his own filled with a deep, ancient regret. The truth is that Gregory Thorne told you a part of it. He began, his voice heavy. I built my empire on the genius of your father, David Sharma. It was a moral theft, and it is the great regret of my life. I wanted to make amends, but I couldn't simply give you money. My shame wouldn't allow it. He continued the words, a confession, decades in the making. The test, the finial, the $1 tip. It was a cruel, selfish attempt to see if your father's greatest quality had survived in you. His grace under pressure, his integrity. I needed to know if you were his daughter in spirit, not just in blood. Your note was the answer. You didn't just pass my test, Anya. You showed me a character I thought no longer existed. He led her from the terrace inside, bypassing the opulent living areas and opening a set of tall double doors. The room beyond was an artist's dream, a massive light-filled studio, complete with blocks of marble sculpting tools and a soaring glass wall overlooking the river. This isn't a handout, Blackwood said softly. It is a restoration. I stole your father's legacy, and in doing so I stole your time, your focus, your chance to create. I am giving it back. He explained it all. A permanent, unconditional trust was already established to cover all of Nina's medical needs for life. That is a debt repaid, he stated. But this, he gestured to the incredible studio, this is for you. I have established the David Sharma Foundation for Emerging Artists with an initial endowment of $500 million. Its mission is to fund artists who have faced hardship. You will be its first grant recipient, and when you are ready, you will have a permanent seat on its board. You will not be my project. You will be the one who finds and supports others like you. Anya walked into the center of the room, tears finally streaming down her face. It was not a feeling of wealth, but of release. The crushing weight she had carried for years was simply gone. He hadn't just given her money. He had given her back her purpose, her soul. Her life was forever changed, not by the insult of a $1 tip, but by the strength of her response to it. She had met cruelty with grace and unlocked not a fortune, but a destiny. In the quiet of the studio, with the river flowing endlessly below Anya Sharma, the artist picked up a chisel. It felt like coming home. Anya's story teaches us a powerful lesson about the world we live in. It's a reminder that our circumstances don't define us, but our reactions to them do. She could have responded with anger, with despair, and no one would have blamed her. But instead, she chose dignity. She chose grace. She chose to see value where someone else saw none. That single powerful choice didn't just change her life. It redeemed a past she never knew existed and built a future that will help countless others. Her story is a testament to the fact that true strength isn't about the power you have, but about the character you show when you have none. It proves that sometimes the smallest gestures can have the most profound consequences. If Anya's incredible journey from a struggling waitress to a life of purpose moved you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. And for more true stories that inspire and make you think, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. What is the kindest act you've ever seen in response to a negative situation? Let us know in the comments below.